The committee, the Senate Committee on Finance and Appropriations will come to order. The clerk will call the roll, please.
Thank you, Steve.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We have an extremely long and complicated agenda today. There is no possibility of creating blocks yet, so we are going to need to be very expeditious in what we do here today. And on various bills, and there are a number that have not yet had public comment, I will be limiting public comment to 1 minute on each side for each bill. We have several bills that the patrons have asked that they be passed by for the day. Those, if you're here for those bills, they will not be heard today. Senate Bill 354, Senate Bill 213, Senate Bill 219, Senate Bill 507, and Senate Bill 534. They will be heard tomorrow.
Madam Chair, could you repeat that list?
Senate Bill 354, Senate Bill 213, Senate Bill 219, Senate Bill 507, and Senate Bill 534.
Thank you, ma'am.
And we will be taking the bills up in the order of that the patrons have signed up. And I believe the first is Senator Morrissey. He's not here. Senator Cosgrove.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. How are you today?
Doing good, thank you.
Good, thanks. Madam Chairman, if we could start out with Senate Bill 620. Madam Chairman, members of the committee, under current law, taxes for each year on real estate subject to assessment and reassessment are extended on the basis of the last general reassessment or biennial assessment made prior to such year. When any annual assessment, biennial assessment or general assessment of real property would result in an increase of 1% or more in the total real estate property tax levied. Such county, city, or town is required to reduce its rate of levy for the incoming tax year so that the cause of rate levy to produce no more than 101% of the previous year's property tax levies unless the locality holds a public hearing. This bill would require that the governing body of a locality to hold a referendum before making increases in the real estate property rate of 1% or more in the total real estate property tax that is levied. If enacted during this regular session, the bill would become effective July 1st of 2022. And Madam Chairman, as we all know, real estate assessments have gone through the roof. And that's sometimes a good thing and sometimes not that good of a thing. This bill is a common sense bill that would put a little more sunshine on the whole activity of raising real estate taxes. And having come from local government before I came to this body, I know that it's not difficult to raise those rates. And I believe we have somebody from the administration to speak to this bill, do we? Oh, there you are, if I may.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Welcome in your new role.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Charles Kennington, Deputy Secretary of Finance. Madam Chair, this is one of the pillars of Governor Youngkin's Day One game plan, and the administration strongly supports this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Are there questions to the patron or Mr. Kennington? Senator Sassaw.
Oh, Madam Chairman, I'm sorry, there is a substitute. If you could.
You're familiar with the famous proposition?
Let's do this. I'm sorry. I know I called on you, but apparently
Move the
there's
committee
a substitute.
Okay.
It's been moved.
Where's the substitute?
Okay, and I guess before we vote on the substitute, it would be nice to know what it does.
Madam Chair, the substitute isn't a committee substitute, it's a patron substitute. And what it does is it sets up a graduated schedule for approval of tax increases. So for any increase up to 101% of current levels, it would remain the same as the policy is under current law. For up to 103%, it would require a majority vote of the local governing body. For up to 105%, it would require a 2/3 supermajority vote of the local governing body. And then any increase above 105% would require a referendum. So it's similar to the introduced bill with some adjustments.
Okay. Senator Sasslaw.
Yeah, you're familiar with the history of this Proposition 13 in California?
Madam Chair, Senator Sasslaw, please educate me.
Well, they passed a thing essentially banning real estate tax increases in the late 70s. And ultimately, they finally, in a state that's, I'll get to that in a second, that now has a fair amount of money, Jerry Brown, when he took over 2010 or 11, had to dramatically raise the income tax, and dramatically. And now last year I saw where they had a $46 billion surplus. They were running $4.5 to $5 billion a year deficits. And the only, from where I come from, I'd rather keep it on the real estate tax, not on the income tax. We already send enough to Richmond from our region. So I got a real problem with what you're trying to do. Besides, if the voters don't like that the fact that the supervisors raised their real estate taxes, they got an election every 4 years in Fairfax County, and they can get rid of them. And often that's a campaign issue. So you got your referendum every 4 years automatically.
Are there any other questions or comments from
Madam Chair,
members? Senator Locke.
my question has to do, is there a cost to local governments to make this change?
I believe there is, the financial impact statement said there was minimal cost involved. Basically, this doesn't keep a locality from raising the real estate rate. It doesn't keep them from doing that at all. It just basically causes transparency. If you go over 105%, the voters have to say yes. And Senator Sasslaw, Madam Chair, may I? Yeah. Senator Sasslaw, you're right. There is an election every 4 years. But if a Board of Supervisors group is elected and immediately does a massive tax increase, your citizens are going to have to live with that tax increase for 4 years before they can take any action whatsoever. And when's the last time you saw one of these reduced by a new Board of Supervisors?
Well, because they don't consider it.
Senator Sasslaw.
Madam Chairman, when the Board of Supervisors has raised the real estate tax in Fairfax County, it's never been by more than a penny or two. Okay? And if it has been by more than that, it certainly, didn't cause the defeat of people in the next election, so they must have been satisfied. We got a pretty good school system up there, and that pays for an awful lot of it.
Yes, sir. We have probably a better system than you have in Chesapeake. We'll compare scores.
How many kids you all got going to the Ivy League?
No.
Madam Chair, I have a follow-up question.
Yes, Senator Locke.
22 million.
If local governments are already having public hearings prior to deciding on an increase in property tax rates, why is that not transparency?
Madam Chair, if I might answer. Senator Locke, thank you. Basically, it is transparent. They have public hearings. However, this is a graduated transparency bill. Basically, they can raise the property tax up to 1% by just having a simple vote and a public hearing of the City Council. If they start to gradually raise that more each year to, let's say, 105%, the citizens will then have to agree to it. And we've done that for utilities, for schools. There have been referendums all over the Commonwealth.
Madam Chair.
Senator Newman.
Madam Chair, just a couple of items. One, John, thank you for bringing the bill. Yeah, I do think our citizens are going to get hit twice. I don't know if they know it's coming. One is on the property tax. The other one is the car tax. The car tax is going to smack them because car values have just gone up so much, and I know we've got a couple of things. When it comes to public hearing, I think we need to be a little more clear. If your assessment goes up, that's not a tax increase, and a locality does not have to have a public hearing if the underlying assessment goes up. It's only if they determine to raise the rates. So one option, I guess being Senator Norman's Karnak here, that maybe this may or may not go, is whether or not we look at having a public hearing at least on this, so that there can be a public hearing if rates go up, if assessments go up, not the rate. So I can understand that. I think this and the car tax are going to be pretty big hits to a lot of the working families.
What's yours?
Madam Chair.
Senator Peterson.
Madam Chair, thank you. And I'll simply say, I think coextensive to what Senator Saslaw said, I actually ran for city council as a young pup back in 1998. And one of my issues was lower property tax rates. I got elected. So for whatever reason. Let me focus on a different point, which is this has to do with the overall revenue that's collected, correct? It's not just rates. And let me ask you to think of it from a different way. If you propose a development, let's say you develop a commercial corridor, you bring in high rises, you bring in a metro, you bring in, a commercial office buildings, the value of that land will go up. I mean, that's the whole point. That's why you do what you do. And so you're almost, it's as if you're saying the counties which grow, like Loudoun County or some of these other counties, that they have to go through a referendum. Well, of course, they're on the board. So my concern is, look, I tend to agree. Look, if property taxes rise too high, there's a safety valve for voters. But my concern is it's almost like an anti-development bill that you're almost discouraging localities from growing. So how would you respond to that?
Oh, Madam Chairman, I'd answer the senator by saying this really has no bearing on new development. Certainly where we are in Hampton Roads, we have quite a bit of new development. But basically this deals with the tax rates, and it really is just a transparency measure to make sure that the citizens are aware of the tax rates that are coming. And Senator Newman really hit that nail on the head. This year, Virginians, watch it, because it's really coming.
But one follow-up, sir, and that is, but if the assessments go up, the rates either have to decrease or the referendum would be triggered, correct?
That's right. That's correct.
That is right.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair.
Senator Ruff. At this rate, by the way, we'll be here till Christmas.
Senator Cosgrove, a little bit of logistics. Most of the budgets, counties are doing their budgets in the spring.
Right.
We've moved all elections till November. Would this require, since the budget goes into effect July 1st, would this require them to have a special referendum in the spring?
That's a good question, and I am not exactly sure of the answer to that. Do you know, sir?
Madam Chair, if we adopted the substitute.
With the idea that we're heading into high inflation, this becomes obvious.
Madam Chair, I'm
Senator Deeds.
I was just wondering if we adopted the substitute.
No, we have not.
Well, then, I move we adopt the substitute.
It's been moved and seconded, the substitute be adopted. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Madam Chair, to
Thank you.
move this thing along, I've got a motion. I'd like to PBI the bill.
It's been moved and seconded, the bill be PBI'd. We unfortunately have not heard from the public yet. So is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
For those in the Zoom room, if you'd like to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
No?
I don't know of anyone, Madam Chairman.
Okay.
There is one in Zoom, Madam Chair.
There's 1 minute.
Cheryl James, please unmute yourself, begin your testimony now.
If you're in the Zoom room, please unmute yourself and speak now.
Yes, that's an error. I put my hand down.
Yes, yes, sir. Oh, sorry.
Good morning. Scott Mayowski, Commissioner of the Revenue for Stafford County. Virginia actually has very good tax policy. The effective tax rate, which is 58.1, 3321, is one of the most effective tax policies I've seen. It clearly shifts the responsibility on tax increases from the assessment to the tax rate. The problem is that in localities that assess annually or biennially, that effective rate is poorly understood or, in effect, hidden. It is buried in newspaper advertisements. It is not discussed publicly, and most importantly, the media and the taxpayers don't understand it. And I heard a little bit of that here this morning, that if you're on an annual cycle and your board keeps the rate the same and your assessed values go up, then that's a tax increase. And what this bill tries to do is to add, as the senator said, more transparency to this process with the graduated system and reshift that focus back to the tax rate and away from the assessed value. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, there is
sir.
one other in the Zoom room. Jordan Miles, please unmute yourself and begin your testimony now.
Yeah, to Chair Howell, to members of the committee, thank you all this morning. Good morning. And I serve as chairman of the Board of Supervisors for Buckingham County, and I represent District 4, Maysville District, and I am in opposition to this bill. Leave it up to us, the localities, to make these decisions, please, and allow for more transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have Senator Hanger.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak to the motion just briefly. Madam Chair, when I came here, the substitute is, in my opinion, better than the original bill in terms of workability. But Madam Chair, I was under the understanding, or maybe hope, that some of these major initiatives were going to be put into a study so that by next year we could come back, not day one, but under this governor's tenure, that we would do some major tax reform. I differ with Senator Saslaw on one respect. I think the income tax is a better measure of ability of people to pay, and I think people that have these multi-million-dollar salaries in Northern Virginia, they can pay that stuff. But at any rate, the other point that I would make, Madam Chair, is that if I were to support something like this, it would have to be in tandem with a commitment for the General Assembly to adequately fund core services back to local governments. That's where the pressure is. They have to do this because many times we don't meet our responsibilities back to local governments. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor to pass this bill by indefinitely. We have a request that it be sent to a yet-to-be-formed subcommittee with the House that will look at tax policy. I will tell you, I don't know if that is going to happen or not. But if there is such, in other words, I haven't had the opportunity yet to talk to the chair of the House Finance Committee, so I don't know if we're going forward with that. So the motion is to PBI, but if we do have the subcommittee, joint subcommittee, then this will be a topic. Okay. So the motion is to PBI. All in favor, please vote. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Ayes 12, noes 4.
Ayes 12, noes 4. The bill is PBI'd.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This next one's pretty brief. Senate Bill 18. We've really kind of seen this bill before. This is just fixing a glitch with one of the bills that we passed last year. It provides that if a retired law enforcement officer was employed by a local school division as a school security officer on January 1st, 2020, and had a bona fide break in service of at least 1 month between retirement and employment as a school security officer, such person is not required to establish a 12-month break in service that would otherwise be required by law. And for retirees who are employed part-time as school security officers, as of January 1st, 2020, this is a change to the return to work exemption and would make it consistent with current teacher and school bus driver retention work exemptions. That's the bill.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak in favor?
For those in the Zoom room, if you'd like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Jay Deck
We
with
have
the
virtually
Virginia
no
Education.
time here, so let's say
Okay.
20 seconds each.
We do ADEC with the Virginia Education Association, and we support the bill.
Madam Chair, Wayne Huggins, State Police Association. We support the bill also. Thank you.
David Westcott, City of Chesapeake, and Public Schools. We support the bill.
Madam Chairman, Steve Burrell, Virginia Law Enforcement Sheriffs. We support this bill. Thank you.
Elizabeth Hobbs, please unmute and begin your testimony now.
I'm Elizabeth Hobbs with the Virginia Sheriff's Association, and we support this bill.
Is that it? Okay. I was just informed that the head of VRS was planning to come to vigorously oppose this bill, but there's been a death in her family, so she's not able to be here. But we do want to put on the record that the VRS is strongly opposed to this. Is there a motion on the bill?
Motion to pass by indefinitely.
There's a motion to pass by indefinitely. Is there a second? And there's a second. Okay, the motion is to pass by indefinitely. All in favor, vote aye. Opposed, no.
Thank you for your time, Madam Chairman.
Ayes 11, noes 5.
Ayes 11, noes 5. The bill is passed by indefinitely. All right, next. Is Senator D. Steph.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good morning. This morning I'm here with Senate Bill 468. And what this bill does is it says that VRS shall be required to use a health practitioner in Virginia or one of the contiguous states, which includes the District of Columbia. And let me give you a couple of examples of the issues that have happened, and one of them as recent as about 2 months ago. Brian Fair is a police officer who had a broken foot. After going through multiple issues over 2 years, he ended up with the VRS person looking at this, or the VRS specialist, ended up being a hand surgeon out of Michigan that said he was fit for duty and able to go back. So they go through the process. Dr. Britt Campbell down our way, who's an orthopedic surgeon, very well known across the country. He's even worked on such people as Tiger Woods, shoulders, feet, hands. But Dr. Britt Campbell, who looked at him, said that these bilateral foot injuries and massive reconstructions that have taken place up to this time and have been required on his right foot will permanently disable him as a police officer. In clear and certain terms, there is no way that even if the patient heals completely, I'm going to clear him to go back to full-duty police work, because refracture of anything in the right foot could ultimately result in the amputation of this gentleman. This is after he had gone through VRS and had 2 specialists, one a hand specialist out of Michigan reviewing his record, and another specialist out of Texas who was not a foot specialist or an orthopedic surgeon. Ultimately, VRS overturned this and sided with the officer. But this is the third one. If you remember when I testified last year, we had Rebecca Jenkins, who was on horseback, got thrown from her horse, broke her back in multiple places.
Senator, we have a very long agenda.
Okay, let me finish up with this one, then I'll open it up for speakers and I'll be done. The bottom line is we need to make sure that there are doctors that are in the area of specialty that can physically see the patients, because when we're getting doctors from Oregon saying this officer is fit for duty and they can't even wear their equipment, and it ends up paralyzing the individual, that's the wrong direction to go. We've got to go back on this, and that's why I continue to carry this bill again this year. Now, we do have speakers, so I'll step out of the way and let them go from here.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator.
we actually liked
Turner.
this bill last year. I move the bill be reported.
It's been moved and seconded the bill be reported. All in favor, please record aye. Opposed, no.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much.
Ayes
Great day.
11, noes 4.
Ayes 11, noes 4. Bill's reported.
Thank you so much.
Next up, Senator Morrissey. Here we go. Oh, I thought I saw him. Okay. Senator Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got Senate Bill 502. Madam Chair, members of the committee, and there is a substitute, Madam Chair, I believe.
Do we have a motion to adopt the substitute? It's been moved and seconded the substitute be adopted. All in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed, it's adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the committee, in my never-ending quest for the Nobel Peace Prize, I am here for Senate Bill 502, which is a compromise bill between the solar industry and local governments. So, and it deals with solar projects of 5 megawatts or less. Currently, they are exempt from taxation by the locality. And what this does, again, by consensus between the localities and the solar industry, is to allow localities to tax the 5 megawatts or less, either by revenue share ordinance or by their machinery and tools tax, as is currently the case for projects in excess of 5 megawatts. And so that's what this bill does. And again, it is a consensus bill, and I understand there's no opposition here, or there has been no opposition voiced thus far to the compromise, and so that's our bill. And I believe
Thank you, Senator.
I believe Chip Dix is here online virtually to speak to it, if anybody wants to.
Yes, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senator Lewis, isn't there another bill out there floating around dealing with the taxation issues and some exemptions dealing with the solar industry?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator Norman.
But
But I'm sure there is. You would probably be aware of it, but I'm not. Yeah.
Well, my only concern is how do these two bills integrate together?
Yeah, I'm not aware of that other bill. Mr. Dix could probably answer that question for you, Senator Norman.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Mr. Dix, you have 1 minute.
Mr. Dix, please unmute and begin your testimony now.
I did. Thank you very much. So, first of all, the solar industry supports this bill. To answer Senator Norman's bill, there is another bill that speaks to Senator Mason's bill. It speaks to real estate assessments. This bill here speaks to taxing by either M&T or by revenue share. So, Madam Chair, we hope you support the bill.
Yes, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Dix, that other bill addresses the exemptions and also how it impacts personal property and/or real estate taxes. And I just want to be certain that we're not doing something in conflict. I don't have any malice towards Senator Lewis's bill. I just want to be sure we're not creating a conundrum here.
Madam Chair, I'd say to Senator Norman, there is no conflict between the two bills. In paragraph C of this bill, lines 21 through 24, it speaks to the no authorization of local taxation for M&T under 58-1-3660 or revenue share under 58-1-2636. Senator Mason's bill speaks directly to real property assessments, which is not covered by this bill, so the two bills are not in conflict.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Senator Norman.
That was my impression, but sometimes I just like to hear things, Mr. Dix.
Thank you.
Senator Marsden.
Madam Chair, in 2020, we presented legislation that was passed that assisted these smaller localities in terms of being able to do the soil and erosion work that they didn't have the bandwidth to do. These localities need some help. We're going to be obligating a tremendous amount of acreage in this state towards solar projects. And we need to make it worthwhile for localities. We're already seeing some localities who are opting out of solar, period. And so making sure that they are able to justify it with their citizens, that it will be of financial benefit to the county is critical, even with these small projects, and it's important that we send that message. So I move that the bill be reported.
It's been moved and seconded. The bill be reported. All in favor, record your vote. Aye. Opposed, no.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I-16, no zero.
Thank the committee.
Do you have another bill, or
I
was
think
that?
that one's gone by, I believe.
That was by for the day. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two bills before the committee, but one of them is connected to some other bills, and I don't see any of the other patrons here. That would be my recordation tax bill, and I don't see Senator Stewart.
That's what? Oh, okay.
But I'd happily present Senate Bill 5 or Senate Bill 12 if you'd like.
Okay.
And I'll present the other if that's what you want to, but I'm not sure that's what you want yet. Senate Bill 12 is a very simple bill that allows counties and cities the authority to return surplus personal property tax revenue to taxpayers, so basically car tax. It's important right now that we give them this authority because the assessments on used vehicles are climbing very high, so much so that several people will actually see their car tax go up this year substantially and likely next year as well, based on the assessments. But there will be a disincentive for the localities actually lowering the rate because we hope that the market will not continue like this. And so what this would allow them to do is provide the relief now and then go back to their current rate and exercising that when hopefully the market stabilizes.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Peterson.
So basically, there's existing authority under 15.2-2511.1 to return surplus funds from real estate taxes, and you're extending that to personal property, which would most likely be car taxes.
Madam Chair, yes.
That's right. Okay. Seems reasonable.
Okay. We have not had any testimony on this, so let's have 2 minutes on each side.
If there is anyone in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. If you are in the Zoom room and would like to speak in opposition to this bill, please raise your hand now.
Eldon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eldon James on behalf of Roanoke County, and we asked the senator to carry this bill so we have exactly the flexibility that Senator Peterson pointed out. Thank you very much.
Is there a motion on the bill?
Move to report.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 12 be reported. Please record your vote.
That's okay. I can explain it on the floor.
Ayes 15, noes 1.
Ayes 15, noes 1. The bill is reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I see Senator Stewart.
Okay, now Senator
arrived.
Stewart is also here. You have identical bills, you and Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My Senate Bill 363 very simply would restore that $20 million in recordation tax that was taken away from a lot of the counties and given to Hampton Roads, and that is the bill in a nutshell. Specifically, it impacted, I see Senator Lucas looking at me. Specifically, it impacted Stafford County by just under $900 million. And they were depending on that. They had to do a local bond referendum to fix roads without state help, and they were planning on using that money to service the debt on that bond referendum, which has kind of put them in a pickle. So we would hope that we could find another funding stream to help Hampton Roads, and we could give that recordation tax money back to the localities that lost it. That's a bill.
And just something to add.
Senator Suderland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the way this came about was probably no one remembers voting for this because it, well, it was put in a conference committee. It was never a provision in either side on the Senate or the House. And then it was put in a conference committee, and at the last minute, the $20 million left all the places where it would be collected to go to some actually wealthier jurisdictions on the other side of Virginia.
It's called Hampton Roads.
Okay, are there any
We support
questions?
Hampton Roads, Madam Chair. We just want to get the money back where
We
it
just want to
belongs.
support 'em a little less.
We can help them with another way.
Madam Chair,
I'm glad 20 million's a little less.
Madam Chair.
Senator Peterson.
Okay, I don't see it in this statute, but I have a dim recollection of the recordation tax money going to fund the Route 58 corridor.
It did.
Is that still current law, or what happened to that? Okay.
Is that right? Oh, that was my bill too.
Any other questions or comments from committee members? Does anyone wish to speak to the bill?
Sharon, the Zoom room would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically. There seem to be a few, I'm sure.
Okay. Those who'd like to speak to the bill who are here, there's a total of 2 minutes.
I'll be brief, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. Jeremy Bennett with the Virginia Association of Counties. As the patrons of the bill indicated, this would just be restoring $20 million in funding to localities that since 1993 until 2020 had counted on this funding as part of their budgets. The funding could be used for transportation or K-12 purposes. Ideally, VACA would like to see Hampton Roads Transit held harmless. We wouldn't want to undercut their funding. I would note that the patrons both have budget amendments as placeholders. The version in the House has a budget amendment that has $20 million dedicated towards HRT. And this is an issue we've been working on for several years. And I would note that 3 members of this committee have carried budget amendments, not taking this specific approach, but restoring funding last year. So we'd urge you to to support restoration of funding and ideally, again, not harming HRT. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good morning. Scott Mahowski, Commissioner of Revenue for Stafford County. Clearly, Stafford County supports this bill. We did count, as Senator Stewart mentioned, on that revenue stream to pay the $50 million bond when our voters voted overwhelmingly to approve it. So we've had to raise taxes to backfill that money. So anything that can be done to restore that funding stream would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. 30 seconds left.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. David Blunt on behalf of the localities in the Thomas Jefferson Planning District region. We also support the measure. Madam Chair, I know that this committee for a number of years has been very conscious of bills in the drawer. And I think that in a time when there's resources available, I would encourage you to look at this as a bill in the drawer and try to address this. Thank you very much.
Okay, is
Madam
there?
Chair- Madam
Yes,
Chair.
Senator Barker.
Just a quick question and comment. As I read the bill, it basically says that this is $20 million of the state, the share of state taxes distributable under this section. So it's a state tax, it's not a local tax that is being passed on to a different jurisdiction. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Senator Barker, the answer is yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Senator Norman.
Madam Chairman, normally considering my colleagues, I would be inclined to support this, but I think we all know that many times on legislation that we're confronted with parochial issues. And I think still the largest employer in the Commonwealth of Virginia, depending upon the season, is the shipyard. And they are a very significant constituent in my community, along with the Naval Air Station, and they rely very heavily upon the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority. And so from a parochial perspective, I regret that I will have to be less than enthusiastic on this bill.
Madam Chair.
Yeah. Senator Newman.
Just briefly, David, I think if this does pass, we do need to backfill Hampton Roads, right? Because there's some important items that are occurring back there. And I know this is light-spirited and that ultimately there's probably going to be a divided vote. But ultimately, I hope that if it goes through the process, which I don't think it will, I do think that we should make sure that we backfill the money.
Madam Chair.
Senator Deeds.
Does it make sense to put these bills together and identify both these gentlemen as chief co-patrons?
Yeah, I'm happy to put mine into Senator's.
Okay, I make a motion that we put 512 into 363 and identify both Suderline and Stewart as chief co-patrons.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the bills be combined and that they have co-chief patrons. All in favor?
Pardon, 1 second.
Vote.
Your bill number 363? So the motion, ma'am, would be to incorporate 512 into 363?
Right.
Right. Okay, all in favor of the motion, please record your vote. Opposed? Also.
That's the only green we're gonna get.
Ayes 16, no 0.
Thanks, Tommy.
Is there a motion on the bill?
PBI.
It's been moved and seconded that the bill be PBI'd. All in favor, please record your vote. Those opposed, likewise.
Ayes 12, noes 4.
Ayes 12, noes 4. The bill is PBI'd.
Madam Chair, do you want me to finish up or
Sure you
wait?
can.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 752 very simply adds Department of Motor Vehicles and Conservation Officers from DCR to the Valors program. You all know what that does, so I won't bore you with the details any further. I do think it's important, Madam Chair, because these folks are left out there. And oftentimes I can speak more so to Department of Motor Vehicles investigators, having been a Commonwealth's attorney. Sometimes they're in some pretty difficult situations because you see a lot of these little car places that sometimes are nothing more than money laundering operations or covers for drug operations, and these guys can get in some pretty tricky situations. I have less experience with DCR, but with them it's just a matter of fairness.
Are there questions for the patron? Does anyone wish to speak to the bill?
If you're in the Zoom room and would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. There is one, Madam Chair.
Please go ahead.
Tim Tunnell, please unmute and begin your testimony now. I can't.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Stewart, for patroning 752. I'm asking you today I represent the Virginia Association for Parks, and I'm asking you today to unanimously approve the inclusion of our law enforcement officers into Valors. Our DCR conservation officer candidates train right alongside of other candidates from the city of Roanoke, Blacksburg, Radford, and surrounding counties. In fact, DCR instructors actually train these folks. The only thing that separates our candidates from the other officers in the class is Valors, the lack of our inclusion. It's simply a matter of fairness. between agencies and doing the right thing. And I ask that you please support this bill.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, members, my name's Randy Brooks. I am the president of the DMV Law Enforcement Chapter of the Virginia Police Benevolent Association. Now is the time for our members to be added to Valors. Our members carry out the same law enforcement function as any other law enforcement officer in the Commonwealth and share the same risks. Our members are well deserving of this benefit that has already been afforded to many other law enforcement officers in Virginia. We hope that you will support this bill, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay. Senator Barker. Oh, sorry, I didn't.
I'm a little short.
I'm a little nearsighted.
Senator Howe, members of the committee, thank you for listening to me today. My name is Bonnie Klakowitz. I live in Northern Virginia. And the lead sponsor of this bill, the Virginia Association for Parks, and you just heard Tim Kennel, has been after this bill for DCR law enforcement conservation officers for 17 years. We've had numerous sponsors, Senator Deeds and Senator Stewart, thank you so much for carrying it this time. I want to tell you that I have lived the life of a conservation officer. We lived in state parks for 32 years in my husband's service. We're both here today. I'm a retired teacher who's retired park manager. And I think everyone knows that first and foremost, when guests visit state parks, they expect to be safe during their visits. And when my husband was called out 2 o'clock in the morning to go check a security alarm going off, and it was a squirrel, but he would have to get up, put on his full police gear, and go out and check on that situation. It is a hazardous duty, and it's hard on park families, and I certainly hope that you will support this bill, and we can finally get our 103 officers in DCR Valors. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Madam Chair?
Senator Barker.
Yeah, I think this is, we've been hearing these types of issues over the last few years. And I think that we need to address it certainly moving forward. Generally, what has happened with these, these classification of different officers in different categories as it relates to Valors. It's been done through JLARC. The most recent one, I think, was a little over a decade ago, so it's been a good while. And it would seem to me that rather than pick and choose between motor vehicles and conservation officers, or both or none, that it would make sense to have an evaluation done of this. And so I would move that we carry this over with a letter to VRS and to JLARC to study this during the year so that we can address it categorically next year.
Thank you, Madam.
It's
Madam
been moved and seconded that the bill be carried over for a year with a letter to VRS and JLARC to give us more specificity on this bill. All in favor, vote aye. Opposed, nay.
Aye 16, no 0.
Aye 16, no 0. The bill is carried over and with a request.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Maybe that keeps it in the forefront and will help us get
We
something
hope.
done for these folks. I appreciate that.
We hope.
Senate Bill 355, now we're moving to one-time money. This is a little bit easier for you all. I get the recurring dollars. Madam Chair, members of the committee, you all are aware that in 2021, Senator Hanger and Delegate Lopez created an enhanced nutrient removal program, and there were certain jurisdictions put into that program, and this bill would add the city of Fredericksburg. The city of Fredericksburg built their treatment plant, I think, in the 50s, and they have done some to upgrade it, but they have a $90 million project coming up, and they are taking it on of their own volition and by themselves to fix their wastewater treatment issues. It is very important. I don't have to remind this body that we're faced with meeting the TMDLs of 2025 under the federal consent decree. We are not on track to do that, and so we need to help these folks to do that. This just adds them into that group. There's also a budget amendment that Governor Northam put in at my request or begging or whatever you want to call it to help the city of Fredericksburg and some others, quite frankly, with these wastewater treatment issues. It really is one of the most important issues we face in the Commonwealth, I think, in the near term. And I don't think there's a better use. Others may disagree, but I don't think there's a better use for one-time money that we have right now than to fix these issues and try to help us clean up the bay. So that's the bill. Maybe someone here to speak, but I don't know. Yes, there is, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Preston Bryan on behalf of the city of Fredericksburg, supporting this bill. When we put together that list of 13 priority projects last year that you approved, Fredericksburg contemplated being in that list at that time. They were looking at other design and financing options at that time, so they weren't quite ready. Now they are ready, and so this just adds them to the list. And I would say that the Fredericksburg facility is has the highest nutrient output of any wastewater treatment plant in the Rappahannock River Basin. So if anyone deserves to be on the list, they should be added. Thank you.
And this brings it down to cutting edge technology. Yes, sir. Significant. And Madam Chair, their treatment plant that they're planning will take it down to the lowest available technology and removal of nutrients, which is pretty significant.
Anyone? Yeah, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Fredericksburg was on the bubble last year when we put the larger bill together, and Preston Bryan, he was involved with that stake. It was a large stakeholder group, and it makes sense that the state is already committed. We actually have already put, I think, $150 million aside into the effort. The larger portion will be paid by the localities, and we'll chip in our share, so I move the bill be reported.
If I could ask a question, because I'm not quite clear how much this will cost. It's $3 million additional?
I don't
Is that the right number?
I don't know for sure. I would have to defer to staff.
Yeah. This, but it's 27 in the introduced budget. This would add 3 million, but not more than that. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
I'd have to defer to staff on that.
Madam Chair.
This puts them on a priority list and gives them some financial help, and you all obviously decide whether or not you want to approve the budget.
Yes, Jason.
Madam Chair, whether they're on the list or not, like any other locality, they're eligible to apply for a WQIF grant.
Okay.
To do that, they have to do a preliminary engineering report, which is still in process. So we don't know what they might apply for, just like any other locality could. So that amount is not determined.
Madam Chair.
Senator Peterson and Senator Norman.
And we heard this in the Ag and Natural Resource Committee. My understanding is the money comes out of the Water Quality Improvement Fund, correct? Mm-hmm. And then separate and apart from that is then locally funded. Is that not correct, Jason?
Madam Chair, Senator Peterson, it's partly correct. It's a reimbursement-based program in which the locality makes the investment up front. The state then reimburses them back from a portion of the WQIF, which is used by DEQ,
Okay.
DEQ to support a loan program.
How about yes, and I'm wrong or no, I'm
Yes.
I'm wrong or I'm right?
You are correct.
I'm correct.
A portion, the
That's
portion
all I
of
needed
the
to hear.
WQIF is at DEQ.
Okay.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, to clarify, the introduced budget included $27 million.
Yes.
Senator Stewart has a separate request, which is 3 that would round it up to 30.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Marsden and Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Stewart, the $3 million, was that just because it looked better to be 30, or what does it specifically accomplish?
The budget amendment that I put in with aside this is more of a placeholder because I thought I had to, more than anything else. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, where you arrived at the $3 million figure.
That's what we kind of figured, and we talked to folks, and it's a placeholder.
Yeah. Madam Chairman, Senator Marsden. Senator Stewart put in an unspecific request And in going through the process of filling out the form, I put in $3 million and sent it back to their office, and that is what they submitted.
Thank you, Jason.
Yes, sir.
Before Jason leaves.
Because it was one more than two and one less than four, right? Yeah, okay,
You have
thank you.
figured out
Okay.
the method to the madness.
Before Jason leaves, Senator Norman has a question.
Jason, realizing how these things can kind of morph, while it's an unspecified amount, can we specify our amount?
Madam Chair, Senator Norman, certainly the General Assembly can appropriate whatever amount that it wants. It is eligible for the reimbursement through the cost share. So if we do not do a discrete appropriation for it at this point in time, it would be eligible for reimbursement later after they've made the investments.
I withdraw my question.
Mr. Chairman, just to be
Yes.
clear, the $27 million that was put into Senate Bill 30 is the city's priority.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Senator.
Madam Chair, I was just going to, and maybe it's already been clarified, but the $3 million, we're not obligating ourselves for $3 million with this bill. That was just some extra money that the senator would like to have to help them out a little bit, it appears.
You know, Madam Chair, I've been doing this for a while, and I have learned that you got to put your budget amendments in, and they got to cover things, or your bill might die. Might die anyway, but you certainly don't want it to die for lack of a budget amendment.
Right. Madam Chair, we don't have.
You learned right.
So I renew my motion to report the bill, but that doesn't obligate us to that $3 million, though.
Right. It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 355 be reported. Please record your vote.
Senator Vogel's proxy. I-16, no zero.
I-16, no zero. Bill's
Thank you, Madam Chair.
reported.
Madam Chair, finally, Senate Bill 354. And what this bill does, you all saw this a couple years ago, but it moves the timeline up for April's waving. You want me to stop?
Oh, we've already taken that by for the day. We thought you wanted us to.
That's fine.
Yeah,
And
okay.
they're working on funding options,
Right.
so it may be good that it is by. Thank you all.
Thank you. Senator Reeves, you're not on my list, but you've been sitting there a very long time, so.
I just enjoyed coming to the budget hearings. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two bills up in committee. Senate Bill 367 and Senate Bill 585.
Senate Bill 367.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill 367 is trying to get in line the HHR slot machines with currently what is practice for all the other entities that deal with gambling. And what it does is it redirects 1% of the taxes collected from the operation of HHR slot machines currently in operation at the Rosie Slot Parlors to help mitigate problem gambling and addiction issues. Money will be deposited in the Problem Gaming Treatment and Support Fund administered by the Department of Behavioral Health and Development Services. Legislation already requires a portion of the state tax revenue collected from other sources of gambling to be contributed to the Problem Gaming Treatment and Support Fund as follows. Lottery puts 2.5% in, sports betting does 2.5%, casinos does 0.08, in addition to another 0.02 to the Family and Children's Trust Fund. And there's also a charitable gaming bill that I'm carrying this year that will require 1% contribution from them also. So this just would put them in line with all the other gambling institutions that we have decided that we're going to allow in the Commonwealth to go to the Problem Gaming Treatment and Support Fund.
Senator Norman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I asked a similar question in Senate Finance meeting previously, and a substantial amount of money is being directed towards this sort of phantom issue of problem gambling. And my question was that CSB seemed to be ramping it up to meet a previously unquantified issue. And you know, I hear the advertisements on the radio about it. My question is, are we creating a bureaucracy that is a solution looking for a problem? And I don't mean to minimize those that have an issue, but one thing I've learned over the years is we go 0.8%, 2.5, 2.5, and 1%. All of a sudden, this is going to be real money. And are we creating a bureaucracy that is going to be addressing a de minimis problem? And I really haven't gotten a satisfactory answer before, other than the fact we're ramping up and we're going to address the problem. Do you have any answers?
Madam Chair, Senator Norman, in 2019, the Gaming in the Commonwealth report from JLARC study said that reported that serious gambling disorders affect 1 to 3% of adults who gamble, and as a result, problem gaming can create financial instability, mental health, all those sort of things. So 1 to 3% of adults who gamble playing slot machines are going to wind up being addicted to slot machines.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I'm
Senator
familiar with
Norman.
the JLARC report, but what does 1.3 translate into?
Well, if we want to look at how much Rosie's made last year in gambling, Senator Norman, I'd be happy if they'd like to disclose what they made and how many players. I could take 3% of that, figure out that they are going to be addicted to gambling, and then how do we help them solve that problem?
Madam Chair, I don't mean to be argumentative. That will not identify the number of people. That will identify what Rosie's has earned and a percentage of that, which doesn't translate into the number of gamblers. That just translates into the number of revenues that are generated, which is not reflective of those participating in the gaming.
Madam Chair, Senator Norman, I agree with you. It's overall number. I'm sure we could probably find out how many people darken the door of their facilities and play slots at some point.
I know. Senator Reeves, as you know, JLARC is continuing a gaming study this year.
Sure.
And I would like to suggest that we carry this over until next year so we can get the benefit of the JLARC study.
I'm fine with that, Madam Chair.
Fine with that? Okay, it's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 367 be carried over for the year and that we carefully track the JLARC study. All in favor, please record your vote. Opposed as well.
Aye 16, no 0.
Aye 16, no 0.
Thank you,
Bill
Madam
is
Chair. And
carried
then,
over.
the last bill I have before the committee today is Senate Bill 585.
Senate Bill 585.
Madam Chair, this legislation would give localities the ability to opt in to provide VRS coverage to 911 dispatchers, equivalent to those provided under the State Police Officers Retirement System. Current law allows localities to opt in to this coverage for the first responders, such as law enforcement officers, firefighters, and EMTs. 911 dispatchers are known as the first responders, but because without them, no first responder would ever be dispatched. Madam Chair, we have left them out of the loop, and I have sat down and talked to many dispatchers. As former law enforcement, there really are our connection to help, and it's a very, very stressful job. And we've just kind of left them out in the cold. I have a ton of groups here to support the bill. It's supported by Virginia Fire and ENF stakeholders, including the Fire Chiefs Association, Professional Firefighters, Virginia State Firefighters Association, Volunteer Rescue Squads, Police Benevolent. Everybody's behind the bill, and we've been working with VRS to make sure we have the language right. So I think Connor has a substitute that we worked with for VRS. If you could do the substitute, that'd be great.
Yes, Madam Chair. So the substitute has a delayed effective date of July 1, 2023, and it provides that it's only for service earned after that date, and it makes a couple of other technical corrections, but that's the
technical in nature as far as the other corrections.
Okay, good. It's been moved and seconded that the substitute be adopted. All in favor, record your vote. Nope, sorry. Opposed? Okay, substitute's adopted.
Madam Chair, would you like to hear from some of the folks? I don't think there's any opposition, but if
there's
you'd like
no
to.
opposition. Okay. That we know of. Okay. Nobody on virtual? Okay.
If
All
you're
right.
in the Zoom room and would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
All right, let's hear a total of 2 minutes in favor.
Morning, Madam Chair. My name is Keith Johnson, President of the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association and Fire Chief of Loudoun County, Virginia. I'm here to support Senate Bill 585. Under current law, localities may provide such benefit to first responders, including firefighters and emergency medical technicians, but not 911 dispatchers. Recruitment and retention is a severe problem with our 911 dispatchers. Challenges include trauma, stresses, difficult hours worked, and low salaries. Recently, last year, the Commonwealth of Virginia released the Emergency 911 Border Response Work Group report pursuant to item 391 of the state budget. The work group assessed the deficiencies regarding 911 public safety answering points and basically said that the salaries and benefits of dispatchers are aiding in deficiencies in the 911 system. So we absolutely feel that this is support this bill to bring the benefits and salaries and up to the standards they need to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Sean McGowan, Virginia Police Benevolent Association, we support this bill.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Thomas Nolan, 911 Director, also AFCO, Association of Public Safety Communication Officers. We support this. We do need some help with retention and attracting best qualified people.
Thank you.
If you're in the Zoom room and you oppose this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Aaron Rice, on behalf of the Virginia Professional Firefighters, we support the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Ed Rhodes, representing Virginia Association of Rescue Squads, governmental EMS administrators, and the Virginia Ambulance Association. Even though having been one many years ago when cans and strings were still in, we support this bill.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Jeremy Bennett, representing the Association of Counties. Just want to thank the patron for making technical changes that preserve the local option of this bill. So thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, Wayne Huggins, State Police Association. This does not affect our dispatchers, but I just wanted to alert the committee. We have 83 dispatcher positions, 22 of which are vacant. If localities create a benefit that our dispatchers don't have, it's going to exacerbate our problems. We have no problem with this bill, but just would like to look out for our people also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to acknowledge the people in support in the Zoom room: Denise Crowder, Joel Kite, John Wright, and Sarah Lindemood.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just want to clarify. We had two substitutes, one that just was local and one that would include state police. And so Connor wanted to remind me, and Lisa and I were talking, it does include state police dispatchers. So Mr. Huggins,
Okay.
we're going to address that at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Okay, what I have just been informed is that the changes in the substitute will significantly impact the fiscal impact, and staff has not had an opportunity to determine that yet.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair?
Senator Peterson.
It sounds like we're not going to vote today, but is this a local option or what?
It was, Senator Peterson.
It was.
But with all the folks behind me, and especially the state police leaving them out, as they just said, we've made the decision to say, hey, let's go forward. But if you all decide that we don't have the money to do that at this time, we would at least like to fall back and make sure we have our localities taken care of.
I understand that VRS is represented here.
They should be
Yes.
here somewhere.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Madam Chair, members of the committee,
But let's hear.
I'm Cindy Wilkinson from VRS. The substitute, I understand with the state police would add them to Valor's because they're state employees. So the other part of the bill would be for local employees, and that would be a local option.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, it seems that since this bill's been substantially changed, we don't yet know the fiscal impact. We should pass it by for the day.
That's fine, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll continue to work on it and try to get a finite number for April.
Thank you,
All right.
Senator Reeves.
Thank you.
Senator Hackworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. And I'd like to take up Senate Bill 17 first, please.
Senate Bill 17.
This Senate Bill 17, and at the request of our sheriffs and law enforcement communities, probably all the members of the committee has had the same request, to address the critical shortages in staffing and retaining employees. And this bill, we've worked closely with LIS, and it's modeled after the Return to Work Critical Shortage Bill for teachers and bus drivers. And this bill basically addresses two key points. One is the ability to receive VRS benefits while returning to work. And then two, the exemption of academy training for experienced, trained, retired law enforcement officers no longer than 5 years in the break of service. So the physical impact, we had that, and we've got a budget amendment in for that, is $148,000, which I think is relatively small compared to the filling these positions that our law enforcement communities is saying that they desperately need filled. That's the bill.
Thank you. The short-term fiscal impact is rather small, but I don't consider 1.7 million annually small, or the 6.6 million for local government is particularly small either. So,
and I would probably argue that a little bit, Madam Chair, with the positions that these are filling are backfilling open positions. So these positions would have to be filled, from employees anyhow. So I think this would be backfilling existing positions that are not filled.
thank you. We have not had any public testimony on this bill. Does anyone here or online wish to speak to it?
If you're in favor of this bill in the Zoom room and would like to speak in favor to that, please raise your hand electronically now.
Yes.
Madam Chairman, Steve Burrell, here again on behalf of the Virginia Law Enforcement Sheriffs, and we support this bill.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Wayne Huggins, State Police Association. We also support the bill. Thank you.
If you're in opposition to this bill in the Zoom room, please raise your hand electronically now. Elizabeth Hobbs, please unmute yourself and begin your testimony now.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hobbs with the Virginia Sheriff's Association, and we support this bill. It would help sheriff's offices fill open positions, increase the pool of potential employees.
Senator Barker.
Madam Chair, I think this is something that can help address some of the problems and issues we have in terms of filling vacancies. But I think we need to look at it more comprehensively right now. I do have some concern about basically receiving a salary at the same time that you're receiving your retirement benefits. It puts us on a slippery slope, I think, in many ways. And so I would move that we pass this bill by indefinitely, and we can study this issue as we move forward on some of the other things during the year. So,
Madam Chair.
Senator Newman.
Madam Chair, maybe just take a little bit of a contrary position. Even if we put a sunset on this, I mean, I think a lot of our localities, I think in the cities and also the counties, we're just having a problem. The city of Lynchburg, in their last recruitment class, got 4 people to apply to be police officers. They need about 30 every year. It got 4. And it's just not working right now. We can go into the wheres and whys, but and I respect what Senator Barker said. It just seems to me that even if we're going to put this on a timeline, put a deadline on it, it seems like it's a tool that we've used for teachers very effectively. And I know my locality is probably pretty desperate for it. So the committee will do it at once, but it just seems to me that it's a tool, even if we put brackets on it, that would be very helpful.
And Madam Chair, if I may.
Senator Hackworth.
So if the VRS issue is the sticking point, the money there, in answer to Senator Barker, I've had some of the sheriffs that have asked if they could just be able to have retired officers that has had a break in service no more than 60 months to be able to return back to work with the exemption of not having to go through the academy again. Because they have a lot of officers that would come back to work, but if they are over 12 months, they have to go back through the academy again. And they're saying that they could get a lot of retired law enforcement to come back, but that is one of the stipulations. And they, they've already went through the academy at some point, and they have, they're saying, we don't want to go through the academy again. We've got 25 years of experience.
So it sounds like you need another substitute.
Madam Chair?
So with that, I think we should, Senator Peterson.
I think you could just strip lines 142 through 157 from the bill, and that gets you where you need to go.
Yes.
So I'd make a motion to just strip lines 142 through 157, which is the VRS piece, and then we just go through you don't need to go through Paris Island
I
all over
think,
again.
though, it is going to need to get some staff analysis.
Okay, fair enough. I would withdraw the motion.
So
So
we pass that by today.
we're going to pass it by for the day to get another substitute.
Yeah, I'll withdraw my motion, and we'll make a substitute motion to pass it by for the day.
It's been moved and seconded that the bill be passed by for the day, and that by tomorrow, we will have another substitute.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right, the second one is Senate Bill 372. And I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute that Connor has prepared.
Okay, we have an amendment in the nature of a substitute. Is there a motion? It's been moved and seconded the substitute be adopted. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's adopted.
Okay, thank you. And I have someone to speak to the bill, but real quickly, this basically directs the Virginia Department of Planning and Budget to implement a continuous regulatory budget program to set targets for the continual reduction of regulations in each executive branch. And I have Deputy Secretary Jennings to speak to the bill.
Good morning,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Good
committee
morning.
members. Senate Bill 372 is Governor Youngkin's part of his day one game plan. This bill, we know there have been efforts in prior administrations to reduce red tape and for the reduction of regulations, including the regulatory reform program. And this bill would expand upon this program. It also would implement a continuous monitoring program that would be managed by the Department of Planning and Budget. And it would set up mechanisms for state agencies to achieve goals and keep agencies accountable. We strongly support this legislation, and if you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you. I was, while being briefed on the bills, rather surprised by the number of initiatives that have taken place on this topic and are continuing to take place on this topic. And I wonder if some of the finance staff could go through some of those briefly.
Madam Chair, I would just like to mention that a couple, as you might remember, there was the Red Tape Commission that currently exists, and also then on the legislative side, you have the Joint Commission on Administrative Rules as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this bill?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Peterson.
I'm going to sort of wage my longtime crusade against putting language in the code that I don't think should be in the code. Why does this need to be in the code? I mean, this seems like something that's you all could promulgate as something to your employees, but why does this need to be in the code of Virginia? So I got to put it in my law books.
And if there's anyone in the Zoom room who would like to speak to this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Madam Chair, committee members, the regulatory process is currently set out in code, and therefore we feel it would be necessary to have these requirements listed in the code to support that.
The purpose being, by putting it in the code, you're avoiding the regulatory process?
No, what we're doing is the focus is to reduce regulations. We feel like it's necessary that, our good controls would be that we focus on where oversight is needed. by reducing regulations in unnecessary areas. This would streamline that process.
Okay,
Right.
Madam Chair.
So that's what I said. Yes, Senator Peterson.
And I'm looking at this, and this is all very good content. I mean, it's sort of like exercising every day or brushing your teeth. But the code really needs to be a set of expectations that is frankly much more defined than some of this text. So I think if it was a Section 1 bill, maybe I'd consider it, but just putting it in the code, I don't think that's the right answer. I'm one guy.
We have not had testimony on this bill. Would anyone in the room desire to testify?
Anybody in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically. Madam Chair, there's no one in the Zoom room.
There's no one in the Zoom room? Okay, thank you. Is there then a motion on the bill? Senator Barker.
Madam Chair, I was waiting to see what Senator Peterson was going to do there.
I tell you what, I will make a motion.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a motion to pass this by indefinitely, and let me speak to the motion. I think this is the type of thing that you could put on a poster and maybe send to every agency head or you know, an exhortation to your employees, which I like to do every Monday when I have my firm meeting. I don't think it belongs in the state code. So I don't disregard it or disrespect any of it. I think these are all very worthy goals for the Youngkin administration or any administration. I don't think that's something that's appropriate for the code section, so I move to PBI.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 372 be passed by indefinitely. Please record your vote.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
Ayes 10, noes 5. The bill is passed by indefinitely. All right. Senator Higgins.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I have Senate Bill 701, which extends the sunset provision on aviation parts and supplies. It's a tax exemption. It simply moves the sunset date to July 1st, 2026, so it's a 4-year extension for sales and use, tax exemption for parts, engines, and supplies for maintaining, repairing, and reconditioning aircraft or any aircraft avionics systems, engine, or component parts. We have a growing aviation industry here in Virginia. Where this is a workforce development issue, in my opinion. We are home to 66 airports and a lot of just growing and thriving aviation, especially with the military being located here. And we'd like to incentivize our maintenance facilities to stay, our pilots to stay, and our airports to stay. So this bill just simply provides that incentive. I ask that you pass it. I'm sorry. We have a substitute. Thank you. That conforms it to the House bill, conforms the date.
Is there a motion to adopt the substitute? It's been moved and seconded the substitute be adopted. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Substitute's adopted.
Madam Chair, does this have a sunset date?
Yes, the sunset is July 1st, 2026.
Okay. We have an amendment to make it 2025, consistent with our policy on these.
And I'll move that amendment.
It's been moved and seconded that the amendment be adopted. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The committee amendment is adopted. Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded that the bill be reported as amended. Please record your vote.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. The bill's reported. Senator Morrissey.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and staff. I have 4 bills before you. Madam Chair, would you just like me to go in order?
whatever order you'd like.
Sure, we'll begin with 104, the repeal of the mandatory minimums. I'm not going to describe that. That's, the title of the bill is self-explanatory. I would remind you, Madam Chair, and the members that this bill passed, this amendment passed last year in this committee 11-5. There is no fiscal impact on it. There is a fiscal impact statement. Do you need me to go into any greater detail?
No.
Okay, thank you. Senate,
I'm informed that we have a committee substitute. Could we have a motion to adopt the substitute? Oh, yeah, please describe the substitute.
Madam Chair and Senator Morrissey, the staff recommendation for 104 was to remove the work group in lines 1685 through 1699, and then to address the issue of whether this would apply to judicial rulings that have already occurred. The amendment would be to add an enactment clause that says that nothing in this act shall create any cause of action for damages against the Commonwealth or any of its political subdivisions, nor shall it form the basis for relief in any habeas corpus proceeding or appellate proceeding.
thank you for sharing those with me. They're practical and purposeful. No objection at all, Madam Chair.
Good, okay. The amendments have been moved and seconded. All in favor of the amendments, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The amendments are agreed to. Is there a motion on the bill? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second, the bill as amended be reported. All in favor, please record your vote.
Ayes 10, no 6.
Ayes 10, no 6. Okay, you have 105.
Senate Bill 105, Madam Chair, is, you remember last year, the odor of marijuana bill. It prevented law enforcement officers from searching automobiles based solely on the odor of marijuana. That was passed. It became law. Subsequently, in various circuit courts, the issue became whether or not the legislation is procedural, therefore retroactive, or is it substantive and not retroactive. Most of the courts are ruling that it's procedural. And so my bill this year clarified that it was, in fact, procedural and therefore had retroactive application. There is no fiscal impact on this bill, and I don't know why it was referred to finance, but it was.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Peterson.
And I apologize, I'm going to ask the same question I asked in courts, which is, if someone's already pled or been convicted and they're serving their sentence, is there any kind of writ of habeas or something they could use to sort of ex post facto challenge the stop?
No, I don't know that they can, and that was certainly not the spirit of this legislation. It was simply to correct that there is some divergence in circuit courts, whether it's procedural.
So it would be pending cases only?
Yes. And if you wanted to clarify that with an amendment, I'm certainly.
I would just feel more comfortable if we had a sentence in there saying this will not affect cases in which there's a final ruling under Rule 1:1 of the Virginia Supreme Court.
Similar to what we did a moment ago. I have no problem with that.
I know we've had this discussion.
Madam Chair and Senator Peterson, we had prepared an amendment that was the same language that I read aloud a few moments ago. So it would cover habeas proceedings, appellate proceedings, and then.
And I apologize. I know this is not the courts committee, Madam Chair. I apologize, but I just. Anyways.
I move the amendment.
Second. The amendment's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. The ayes have it. Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded. The bill be reported as amended. All in favor, vote aye. Opposed, nay.
Ayes 11, noes 5.
Ayes 11, noes 5. The bill's reported.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. The next one is 108, which is the abolition of isolated confinement or solitary confinement. You may recall that in Senate Judiciary, this bill passed last year. There was no suggestion by DOC that it had any fiscal impact at all. We're abolishing a program. It went over to the House, and within literally a few days, the impact was $32 million. I don't know where it came from, but it was $32 million. This year, during the summer, the Department of Corrections announced that they were abolishing restorative housing, which is a synonym for solitary confinement. Notwithstanding the fact that we're abolishing a program, the fiscal impact is $8.2 million. I do not know how we went from 30 million to 8.2 million. I don't know where it's coming from. But I have the fiscal impact, and they suggest that there's a DOC estimated cost of $4.8 million and a DJJ of $3.3 million. Because they did that, I did put in a budget amendment for $10 million, which at the time is what we were told they were probably coming up with. I'll try to answer any other questions. It seems like a little bit of funny money to me, but it's not my, it's in your bailiwick, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there questions for the patron? Does anyone wish to speak to the bill?
If you're in the Zoom room and would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand.
You know, I'm sorry, that was my mistake. It was heard in a previous committee, so we don't take testimony. I'm sorry. Okay.
Move report.
It's been moved and seconded the bill be reported. All in favor, please record your vote aye. Opposed, no.
Ayes 11, noes 5.
Ayes 11, noes 5. The bill's reported. And you have one more.
One more, yes, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, it's Senate Bill 110. It's a bill to allow juvenile parole for those individuals sentenced as a juvenile and have served 20 years. We passed that legislation last year. Or this bill, if they've served 30% of their sentence. The fiscal impact came out a few days ago, and it was $138,000, essentially for a staff attorney at the OAG. Madam Chair, I didn't put in an amendment because at the time there was no fiscal impact, and this impact just recently came out. So the bill is simply this, that a juvenile, an individual who was sentenced as a juvenile and has served 20 years of their sentence, be eligible for parole, or if they've served 30% of that term of imprisonment. And I understand that it could affect, I want to say, I saw the number, something like 122 possible offenders in a DOC system of 26,000.
Okay, are there questions for the patron? This was heard in judiciary, so there's no testimony.
Move report.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 110 be reported. Please record your vote.
Senator Locke's proxy. Ayes 10, no 6.
Ayes 10, no 6. The bill's reported. You had a good morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members, staff. Thank you for your time.
Now, does that complete the? Oh, Senator Mason. Sorry.
Yes, ma'am. Morning, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 686 for me. So this was an effort to try to get at if you put rooftop solar on your house and your house was worth $200,000, you put $25,000 worth of solar on, that the locality wouldn't automatically assess your house at $225,000. It was drawn to solar facilities that do not require zoning. So that is residential, that's residential on agricultural land. It does include some industrial and multi-use, so an apartment. So it's rooftop or attached to the ground to the service of just the facility that we were trying to get at. So there's the fiscal impact almost seems to speak to another bill that I have that's not in this committee. Pollution control work and solar. Over here, there was one in the other body that spoke to the local impact, that just asked localities, are you doing this? Most came back and said no. A couple said 25,000 here. One, Winchester claimed 100,000 worth of impact, but I don't think they understand what we're talking about, because that would mean almost every house in Winchester would need solar on the roof. So that's what we're trying to get at, Madam Chair.
Are there questions for the patron? Anyone like to speak to the bill?
If you're in the Zoom room and would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Yes, please.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Greg Habib, Gentry Lock here on behalf of the Solar Energy Industries Association. We strongly support this bill. This is an opportunity to really get rooftop solar deployed across Virginia with little to no fiscal impact. Very few localities are taxing this right now, but before they begin and start relying on that revenue, it's important that we create this exemption. This is a way to incentivize the rooftop solar, which is what most folks are most strongly in favor of, both on the right and the left in this aisle. And so we would encourage you to support this bill. As Senator Mason pointed out, this is a very narrow subset of solar that you all have already deemed exempt from zoning. This is not utility scale solar. It's not 5 megawatt solar. This is very small on-site solar that you have already exempted from zoning, and it should just also be exempt from local taxes. In addition, the localities will see property rates go up, property values will increase. So over time, we actually think it will net positive to the localities through higher comparable sales. There just shouldn't be a tax when you install it. That shouldn't be a taxable event. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're in the Zoom room and would like to speak against this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Chip Dix, unmute yourself and go ahead and speak.
Yes, sir. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Chip Dix on behalf of the Chesapeake Energy and Storage Association. We support this bill, and I'd just like to make one comment with respect to follow up on Mr. Habib's comments. So if you add equipment to a home, it doesn't really raise the real property assessment because equipment is depreciated, whereas real property assets increase. And so that's if you added something like an HVAC system or a generator or whatever, the real estate assessor wouldn't come out and increase your assessment and then turn around as that property depreciates as 5-year property under the IRS code, turn around and reduce your assessment over the next 5 years. So we don't think it's a proper thing for real estate assessment. We'd urge you to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Walker, please unmute and begin your testimony now.
Richard Walker, resident of the city of Richmond. I support the bill as it will help increase the low-income communities, rural communities, that they too may be able to add solar to their rooftops, to their residents, to add more equity to their properties, as well as reduce their utility bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, one more speaker.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, Joe.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Joe Lurch with the Virginia Association of Counties, actually speaking in opposition with concerns about the bill. We will note that in 2010, Senator Ruff had a bill, it's actually in Chapter 32, under the real estate chapter, that made this an option for localities. And so there was a recognition then, and I think there's some confusion about how you determine the fiscal impact, because it could increase, overall it could increase the assessed value of a property through comparable sales that an assessor may look at. And so there could be some impacts to localities. We support this being an option for localities. We'll note that many localities have gone this route. I have had discussions with the patrons and the proponents of the bill. It is overly broad. It goes beyond just residential rooftop solar. It goes to ground-mounted facilities that could be rather large for a commercial, industrial, or office facility, that it really mixes in with the real estate value. So we have concerns and at this point oppose the bill. So thank you.
Thank you. Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Mason, if you installed rooftop solar and it did increase the value of your home, that would be determined at the next point of sale, which would reset the local property tax. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Senator Marsden, yes, sir, that would be the place the locality would get the increased property value. We're just trying to make sure that until that sale, you're not taxed on the improvement until you sell it and it's worth more money.
That's correct. Thank you.
Senator Ruff's bill was broader. This is a narrow subset within Senator Ruff's previous effort. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the bill?
Move to report. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 686 be reported. Please record your vote.
I-16, no zero.
I-16, no zero. The bill's reported.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Senator Newman, do you have a bill?
I do.
I think you do.
Madam Chair, would you like me to do it from here, or would you like me to do it from down there?
Where you are is fine.
All right. Madam Chair, this is a bill that comes to us from the VRS Board of Trustees. Madam Chair, as over the years, we have had the Plan 1, Plan 2, and the hybrid plan. What this bill does is it finally separates the existing blended defined benefit and defined contribution plans and moves it into an actuarial definition to where each are being able to stand alone. I believe this will ultimately reduce the administrative burden. It'll improve the operational efficiency for both VRS and the employers that use the fund. It'll also allow our members of VRS or localities to be more flexible in their ability to change their voluntary contribution from a quarterly rate to a monthly rate, and it will allow their contributions on both sides to be invested more quickly. Madam Chair, there is a fiscal impact. What they have done is all of it is non-general funds, and they will use it out of their administrative funds from VRS. What we can't calculate is the savings, because there's going to be a good bit of savings in not having to reconcile all these funds every year kind of going forward. So I think this is more than a technical change, but it is an improvement to the plan now that there are actually more people going into the hybrid plan than there are the other plan. And I know the VRS is here to speak to the bill, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there questions of the patron? Would anyone like to speak to the bill?
If there is anyone in the Zoom room who would like to speak to the bill, please raise your hand electronically.
This is a request of the VRS, so I'm assuming they're in favor. Yes.
And Madam Chair, there's no one in the Zoom room to speak in favor of the bill.
Thank you.
Cindy
Yes.
Wilkinson, VRS. Madam Chair, we're happy to answer any questions on the bill. Thank you, Senator Newman.
I don't know that we can't hear you.
Okay. Cindy Wilkinson with VRS. We're happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Is there a motion on the bill?
Move to report.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 70 be reported. Please record your vote.
Good bill.
I-16, no zero.
I-16, no zero. The bill's reported. Senator Eben, you have a bill? Oh, he's not here. Okay. Senator Lucas?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair.
You have a couple bills, I see.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair, if I might do it from here. Senate Bill 755 is a compensation for wrongful incarceration. It restructures how a wrongfully incarcerated person is compensated. Under current law, a person receives 90% per capita income for each year he was incarcerated. Under the bill, compensation is linked to median household income, and a person receives additional amounts if he was sentenced to death, served on parole, or was required to register as a sex offender. The bill directs the compensation to be awarded to a person in a lump sum rather than, as under current law, awarding 20% of the lump sum and using the remaining 80% to purchase an annuity. That's pretty much the essence of Senate Bill 755, Madam Chair.
Are there questions of the patron?
Yes, I think. Yes. Oh, that's right. I do have line amendments, Madam Chair, and I would appreciate it if staff would cover those for me.
Madam Chair and Senator Lucas, the first line amendment is on line 38. And it would, after the word felony, strike may and replace it with shall. So it would state that the Commonwealth shall provide compensation rather than may as under current law. And then there are 5 more line amendments that were requested by DPB and the treasurer, which would, on lines 57, 60, 61, and a couple of other places, just identify that DPB would be responsible for making the calculation rather than the treasurer.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move those line amendments.
The amendments have been moved and seconded. All in favor of the line amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The line amendments are adopted.
Madam Chair, if I might just further give you some information, the bill eliminates provisions of current law that requires a person to forfeit unpaid compensation if the person is subsequently convicted. The bill removes the following requirement for a person to receive compensation for wrongfully incarcerated under 1(i), that the person shall have entered a final plea of not guilty, or regardless of the plea, the person incarcerated was convicted of a Class 1 felony, Class 2, or any felony for which the maximum penalty is imprisonment for life, and (2)(i), that the person incarcerated did not, by any act of omission on his part, intentionally contribute to his conviction for the felony for which he was incarcerated. And that pretty much is the essence of the bill, Madam Chair. And with that, I move approval. Move that the bill be recommended for approval.
We have not had public comment on this yet, Senator, so let's see if anyone wants to speak to this bill.
Yes, ma'am.
755.
If there's anyone in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. If there's anyone in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition to this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Okay, yes.
Hi. My name is Juliette Hatchett. I'm the Associate Director at the Innocence Project at UVA School of Law. I'm joined here today with 5 of our clients who have been exonerated, who were wrongfully convicted of crimes they did not commit. We have 6 clients who've been exonerated. The 6th could not be here today. He has physical ailments stemming from his incarceration, and he cannot afford the wheelchair-accessible vehicle that would allow him to travel here. That is just one of the many reasons that this compensation is so extraordinarily important. These 6 men collectively have served roughly 115 years in Virginia state prisons for crimes they did not commit. Their stories illustrate the need for compensation reform in Virginia. Eric Weekly is closest to me. Eric was only 19 years old when he falsely confessed to a murder he did not commit.
You only have a few seconds left.
Could you get them all to stand, please?
If you could all stand up, we would appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
20% of wrongfully convicted people plead guilty for rational reasons to crimes they did not commit. Virginia is one of 6 states that bars people who pled guilty from receiving compensation. Mr. Weekly deserves to be compensated, as do all of these other gentlemen, for the time that they spent behind bars. We can't make them whole, but this legislation comes a step closer to making up for what has been done to them. So we appreciate your time and consideration of this bill, and thank you, Senator Lucas.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in favor?
I'll just be really quickly, my name is Lori Roberts with the National Innocence Project, and I just want to note that I'm available to answer any questions about the national landscape on this type of legislation, on statistics and data relating to Virginia exonerees, and as well the potential fiscal impact of this legislation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in opposition?
Is there anyone in the Zoom room in opposition? Please raise your hand electronically. Madam Chair, there's no one in the Zoom room.
Okay, is there a motion on Senate Bill 755? It's been moved and seconded that the bill be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 16, no 0.
Ayes 16, no 0. The bill's reported. Senator Lucas, you also have Senate Bill 522.
Yes, ma'am, I do. Madam Chair, Senate Bill 522, as you know, is something that we've been working on for years. 522 requests the General Assembly to create a supplemental toll relief program for persons in Portsmouth, Norfolk, annually netting $30,000 to $45,000 annually. This supplement toll relief program will benefit persons considered to be asset-limited, income-constrained employment. Alice employees tend to work many jobs important to our economy and are paid hourly and work throughout without benefits. This category includes workers such as clerks, teachers, aides, daycare workers, cashiers, nursing assistants, servers, laboratories, security guards, secretaries. This will provide this extra help for the next 4 years and would be extremely helpful to these workers, especially as we continue to recover from the impacts of the pandemic and the impacts that it has had on many of these families and our economy. Madam Chair, although the preferable action would be to permanently eliminate tolls in lieu of that occurring approval and funding, this supplement toll relief program brings this matter a step closer to achieving the goal of who can least afford them. And so with that, Madam Chair, I think you may have some speakers in the audience. I know I see Sherry Neal, who is a liaison for the city of Portsmouth, but if you would allow her to speak, I would appreciate it.
Yes.
If you are in the Zoom room and would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Really quickly, thank you, Senator Lucas, for bringing this forward. I just would like to add to the information I sent out to all of you last night that these two tolls are basically traveled by the regional people that live in the area, not people who live outside of the area like they would go across the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. There's no free lanes available. There's no reasonable alternative way to travel. And also, based on the Alice report, in 2018 in Norfolk, out of 89,338 total households, 50% are considered Alice workers and in poverty. And in Portsmouth, out of 34,578 total households, 57% are Alice workers and in poverty stricken. And one statistic is that according to the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization, the cities in our region that have the highest frequency of usage of the tunnels are persons who live in Portsmouth and Norfolk, both rating 31% of the trips taken and both having the highest city poverty rates. So we appreciate your consideration of these bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Jessica Dennis, representing the City of Norfolk. For all the reasons stated by my colleague from Portsmouth, the City of Norfolk
Madam
supports
Chair, I have a
this.
question.
Yes, Senator
And that
Edwards.
is, what's the average toll person has to pay going and coming? Because I don't live in that area. What is the average toll that a person has to pay? One way, two ways?
Madam Chair, Senator Barker, it goes up every year. So there's not an average that we can say that this is $1.75 this year. Next year, it might be $2.25. Next year is $3 something. And that's just for the people who are driving in their cars. The trucks are even higher. And if you don't have a pay-by-plate, it's even higher.
Well, like today, what is it for a automobile?
I think the
In peak hours.
I'm sorry, at peak hour? Okay, well, the most recent ones I have are 233 with a transponder and 602 without.
Jeez, I'm glad I don't live there.
Thank you, Senator Edwards.
Madam Chair, there are also two people still in the Zoom room.
Thank you. I did just want to comment that those sound really cheap to those of us who use the Dulles Toll Road.
But there's a huge,
Oh, excuse me, sorry.
no, I'm
If
just
you're
saying
in the
there's,
room and would like to speak in opposition to this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
huge income gap too.
Carl Jackson, please unmute and speak.
Hello, yes, thank you, Madam Chair and other members of the committee. My name is Carl Jackson, Manager of Transportation Planning for the City of Portsmouth. And I'd like to reiterate the city's support for this legislation. As you know, Portsmouth is a fiscally stressed community with a large portion of low-income population. But since 2014, we've been disproportionately impacted by the tolls on the downtown and midtown tunnel. Two studies that were commissioned by Old Dominion University showed that the tolls serve as a regressive tax on lower income individuals, and Portsmouth pays 6 times more than any other city in Hampton Roads. We have 3.5% of the per capita income, but pay 20% of the tolls. So I just want to reiterate that the city does support this toll relief program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Terry Danaher, please unmute and begin your testimony now.
Terry Danaher? Was she on mute?
Terry Danaher, we are not hearing you. It seems you're unmuted. Have you tried muting and unmuting again?
Okay.
There seems to be some technical issues with Terry Danaher's testimony.
Okay, the bills in front of us. One concern is that we're not sure we can use ARPA funding for this purpose. So if we can't, it would all be general fund.
I'll take it any way I can get it.
Madam Chair, you say our funding, what, you mean ARPA? What?
ARPA, I said ARPA, I'm sorry.
ARPA
It's
funding.
unclear we can use ARPA funding for this purpose. So, is there a motion? Or is it Senator?
Well,
Barker?
Madam Chair,
Senator Barker.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Senator Barker.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to carry this over and send a letter to VDOT to evaluate the options and potential funding sources, and hopefully be able to address this next year then, so.
Madam Chair,
Senator Edwards.
it seems to me we could move this along. We're not even halfway through the session. This issue could be looked at more closely as the bill moves along. We ought to go ahead and adopt it now. If it turns out that we have to do something different, we can do it later.
Madam Chair?
Senator Peterson.
I guess my question is, this is a Section 1 bill. I mean, is there money in the budget for this that would be a general fund appropriation? I mean, did the outgoing governor put any money in the budget? Is there a budget amendment?
Jason.
Madam Chair, Senator Peterson, no, sir, there is no proposal in the outgoing introduced budget. Based on our analysis of the rules for ARPA, we do not believe this would be eligible for ARPA funding. So if the committee does elect to move forward, you would have to come up with the funding to fund the program. There's currently a privately funded program by ERC OPCO that manages the tunnels.
Okay.
That spends about $3.2 million. This is the first year of doing it. The state does not make any contributions into it. It's from their private revenues. So that is, implementing it will also be a challenge.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Lucas.
I guess maybe my inquiry would be around whether or not we just carried this over until we could do some internal research to see if there's some way of funding it, because we're not talking about a lot of dollars here. We're talking about people who are in a certain income bracket, and that certainly will be a lot lower than I think most people are anticipating. So can't we just maybe carry this over for a week and then see if there is some possibility of funding that? Because after all, it's not like for everybody in Hampton Roads. It's only for people in that really low income category area.
Yeah, well, it's been moved and seconded that the bill be carried over for a week. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Oh, is that a recorded? Okay. Okay, good. It's been passed by for the week. Let's see, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I apologize for being late. Reagan had a doctor's
Actually-
appointment that we could not move. Madam Chairman, could we take up 385? I think that's probably the SB 385.
Senate Bill 385.
Madam Chairman, this bill came from, it impacts bankers specifically, and specifically right now, banks are subject to the existing bank franchise tax, which means their officers and directors pay tax based on that franchise tax. Apparently, there are a limited number of localities that are also now taxing that income separately through, in essence, the local business licensing tax. So this would eliminate localities' ability to tax that officer compensation through that local business licensing tax, since it's already being taxed through the bank franchise tax. So, and I know I'm getting the nod over there that I explained it well, which is a little shocking, but I think it's fairly limited in scope of the impact and should have no state fiscal impact, only on the jurisdictions that are doing this, which I don't think we intended, because we were taxing them through the bank franchise tax.
Are there questions for the patron? Yes, Senator Parker.
Yes, Senator McDougal. What's the impact, what is the license fee for the bank director who would be paying this tax?
I'm gonna phone a friend, but I was looking at that. I think the tax that they are paying now through the franchise fee is the net capital at $1 per $100. I think it's the.
Madam Chair, Senator Barker, Matt Brennan with Virginia Bankers Association. Right now, it's kind of what used to be triple taxation. Right now, the bank pays a franchise tax based on deposits where it's located, 80% to localities, 20% to the state. Then the director, with the compensation they receive as an officer of the bank, it reports it as income, is taxed as income. What we've seen is a couple localities that have now, again, when they file their taxes on Schedule C as the income, also saying, well, this is another business operation, we're going to tax you on the local license tax. So this is kind of eliminating that triple taxation.
Madam Chair, follow-up.
Yes, Senator Barker.
But what amount is it? Do they pay $100 or $1,000 or what?
Madam Chair, Senator Barker, for the local licensing fee, I want to say they can charge, it's like $50 or $30 plus some other extra fees. So it's not a large amount on the licensing fee, but again, it's one more thing that they're getting dinged on.
All right, thank you.
Are there further questions? Yes, Senator Evan.
Briefly, how common is this practice? I mean, is this happening all over, or is it just a few places that are doing this?
Madam Chair, Senator Evan, I believe we know of at least one locality that has been doing this, and we didn't want this to start spreading
Sure.
to being others picking up on
Thank you.
a revenue opportunity.
I did not ask which locality.
Okay, would anyone like to comment on this bill?
If there's anyone in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Madam Chair, I'm curious about the locality.
Senator Deeds.
If we know which locality is doing this.
Madam Chair, Senator Deeds, I believe it's a locality south of here. I can't remember exactly the one, but frankly, it was a bank director who had been a bank director for a while, moved across the county lines, and suddenly started getting assessed this and said, this is the first time in 30 years this has happened, so that's why we're here.
Yes, Senator Evan. It's been moved and seconded. The bill be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 15, noes 1.
Ayes 15, noes 1. The bills are reported. You have another bill?
Yes, Madam Chairman, the next bill is 748. Madam Chairman, members of the committee, I think that there was either an amendment or a substitute to this bill which dealt with some technical things. So I would ask that that be agreed to, but in overall, the scope of the bill, the issue is when we passed the.
Let's get the amendment before I forget. Okay. Connor, can you read the technical amendment?
Madam Chair and Senator McDougall, the amendments are available on LIS. Basically, what they do is align the timing of the imposition of the tax with current tax guidance by the tax department.
The technical amendments have been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Madam Chairman, the current, when we passed legislation, I believe it was a couple years ago now, in essence, picking up the ability to tax retail goods that are purchased from out of state, the Wayfair, that was positive, and cigar tobacco products were picked up in that. There is a separate tax that is paid on cigar and tobacco products that are imported in, and that tax is an excise tax that is paid at the wholesale level. Right now, the entities that, which is shocking, they don't usually come to us and say this, but the entities that are shipping the largest volume of cigars into Virginia are saying there's no mechanism for us to pay that tax, so we're not collecting it right now. And they have a fear at some point Virginia's going to come back and say, how come you haven't paid? And since they're not collecting it, it would be on them. This bill would make it clear that those remote sellers are collecting that excise tax and remitting it to Virginia. I have not personally talked with tax, but people in the industry have, and there seems to be a disagreement about the mechanism to do that. But the retailers are in this situation, I think, trying to be forward-thinking and saying, we want to make sure that this excise tax is being paid to Virginia. I think self-interest, they don't want to get stuck with the bill at some point back in Virginia says, how come you haven't been collecting it? But they don't think there's the ability to remit it at this point.
Are there questions for the patron?
And I know that because they all were in my office yesterday, there's a number of people, if you have questions, that are more than happy to talk to you about it.
If there's anyone in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. If there's anyone in opposition in the Zoom room who would like to speak to that, please raise your hand electronically now. Madam Chair, it does not appear there's anyone who would like to speak in the Zoom room.
I understand there are representatives of tax in the Zoom room, and I do have a question for them. It appears that in the budget language from the 2020 session would supersede the code on these taxes, and it's unclear this bill would have any effect at all. Is that the case?
This is Joe Mayer with the department. The rate structure was changed, and so the rate structure in the statute is not followed. And the bill could not change that.
Madam Chairman, that is my understanding, and that's really not the focus of the bill, but I think that it's more in the other parts of the bill with what is particularly in that section dealing with records to be kept and reports. This is more, certainly this does not change I believe the rate structure is higher tax in the budget than in the code currently. The budget would still supersede. This is about the ability to collect those taxes. And I think Mr. Guy Rowling is here, and he can probably go tell you from the sellers, the retailers' position, why they think it's such a big issue.
Guy.
Madam Chair, Guy Rowling, I'm representing the Cigar Association of America. We support this legislation. Basically, what it really does, it provides a pathway for us to collect and remit this excise tax. That's basically what it does.
But right now, that's not occurring.
Right, correct. We don't think we have the ability to do so, and this clarifies it, and we are very much supportive of this bill.
Thank you. Are there further questions?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 748 as amended be reported. Please record your vote.
Ayes 16, no zero.
Ayes 16, no zero, the bill is reported.
Madam Chairman, I have one final bill, 382, and I'll be very brief in the explanation. I've had some form of this historically, and I'll articulate to the committee what I feel the issue is. And I know some others on the committee I've had these direct conversations with. A number of years ago, when Senator Watkins was still here and we revamped VRS, we did it for everybody, including judges. The issue that's become with judges are that if an individual is either not a county attorney that's in the state system, not a prosecutor that's in the state system, or not a public defender in the state system, they cannot afford for retirement purposes to become a judge, because under the structure, if they're above 55, they're 60 years old, it financially is impossible to go onto the bench and receive any sort of retirement. You're just not there long enough to make that work. So I think when we were looking at VRS historically, we thought it was a good idea to have judges on the same path. But what we did not contemplate was the fact that we like to get individuals to want to be judges that have had a vast and lengthy practice, so they have lots of experience, and we like it to be the capstone of their career. So they're late 50s, early 60s going on the bench, and we've created a system now that makes it, unless somebody is financially, personally wealthy, almost impossible for them to be able to afford to do it unless they're a prosecutor, unless they're a county attorney, or unless they're a public defender. Or I guess the Attorney General's office would also fall into that. But unless they're in one of those state governmental or type roles, they can't afford to do it. So I picked a arbitrary age of 55 to do it at. I'm not wed to that. It is just a real, in my opinion, problem. And what I was trying to look at was saying, circuit court judge, we would like them to be able to spend 2 terms on the bench. So 8 years, 16, that's where I just, in essence, sort of backed that down from retirement age 63. But if it's 10 years or age 60, I do think that this is a real problem if we want attorneys to be able to come onto the bench in the future that have a vast amount of experience and not government attorneys.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator Deeds.
For years, I've been very concerned about the quality of our bench because I see it every day. We want people at the top of their game, at the top of their earning capacity, to have some incentive to become a judge. When you and I got here in the early 90s, we had 3.5 years of retirement for every year on the bench. That way you can incentivize a person at the age of 55 when they're making a lot of money as a lawyer to go on the bench because they had retirement security. But now, with 1.5 years as our multiplier, you're only incentivizing the type of people that Senator McDougal's talking about, basically prosecutors and county attorneys, people in the Attorney General's office. And those of you who know me know those are exactly the people I've railed against being on the bench. So I'm not certain if this is the right approach, but we have to take an approach like this or similar to this if we are going to make sure we have the best bench, the best quality on the bench we can.
Madam Chairman, I don't want to speak against my own bill, but this is a problem that did not get created overnight. This is a solution that I kind of picked, but it's not, the specific solution is not one that I'm wed to, whether it needs to happen in the next 2 weeks before crossover or a longer period of time. It is just an issue that we need to fix. The sooner we fix it, the better, but it is not insignificant as far as thinking through the ramifications of whatever direction we decide to go.
Madam Chair, I would suggest that maybe you and the chairman of the House Appropriations and the chairman of the two Courts of Justice Committees or the Senate Judiciary Committee would want to put together a study committee over the next year to take a look at this and come up with a solution that works for us long term. You know, and this problem was not created by. It began basically in the 1990s when you know, Democrats were in charge of the House of Delegates. And we had an appropriations committee that thought this was the way to save money. Well, it was, but it wasn't the way to make sure we had the best bench we could.
Madam Chair?
Senator Edwards.
Yeah, I agree completely with the senator from Bath. This has been a problem that's gotten worse over time. I'm not sure what happened in the early 90s, but we had a pretty good system before that. And the problem is getting people later in life who have a wealth of experience to get on the bench. They can't afford to do it. They say retirement's not good enough, I can't do it. And so we need to encourage people who've had a wealth of experience to be on the bench. And I think we should have done this before. We ought to do this now.
Madam Chair.
I think we're, Senator Peterson.
I know we're all violently in agreement. I would just say there's a pretty good barometer to use, and that's U.S. District Court judges. And look at their salaries, look at their retirement. I'm not saying we need to get 100% of the way there, but we should probably be at least 90% of the way there because we would expect our circuit court bench to handle similar issues.
I believe that we're coming to a consensus that the bill should be carried over and looked at in the interim, but the question is by whom? And I would just like to throw out a suggestion that perhaps by VRS, to look at the various options to get kind of the politics out of this totally. Although any of the other suggestions could work as well.
Madam Chairman, what I would request is that somehow members be able to retain some control of ensuring that this is looked at. Because I think we've kind of flirted with the issue over the years and said, hey, this is something that needs to be done. And then we've always said, well, I don't love that solution, but we've not actually come up with what the answer is. And I think we need to come up with the answer. And I think we probably, in addition to VRS, we probably ought to ask the Supreme Court as well to give some opinion.
Madam Chair.
But maybe a member-driven process might be a little bit better.
I hesitate to volunteer for anything in this life. I will say our General Government Subcommittee, we just had a presentation from the Supreme Court. We deal with VRS. This may be a good issue for us to take within the breast of our subcommittee. Just saying.
Yeah. Do others agree with that? Okay. Okay. So carried over and then, right. That is, and you're nodding, so.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, yes. As long as members are going to make sure that we come back with something for next year, this is really important.
Okay, good. So that's the motion that it be carried over and looked at over the interim by the General Government Subcommittee. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, record your vote aye.
I-16, no zero.
I-16, no zero. Bill's report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much for working with Reagan's doctor's schedule today.
Okay. Senator Evan?
This is FP 271.
271.
Yeah. This is the Living Donor Protection Act. Basically what it does is it deals with organ donors, and there were only about 170 patients who received living donor transplants in Virginia in one recent year, and it protects them in two ways. It prohibits insurers from denying insurance to a donor, assuming they meet other standards of insurability, and it requires that employers provide up to 60 days of unpaid organ donation leave, and that's only for businesses of 15 employees or more, and it's only for employees who have worked a certain number of hours, a significant number of hours. So you can't just go to a job and say, I need to take off for 60 days to donate an organ. There are about 20 states that have similar provisions of a Living Donor Protection Act. And an NIH study demonstrated that people who donate organs experience discrimination by insurance companies solely based on their status as an organ donor, which is counterintuitive because in order to donate an organ, you have to be particularly healthy. And it came out of Commerce and Labor, I believe, unanimously.
Are there any questions for the patron? And it has been in a committee previously, so there's no public testimony. Is there a motion on the bill?
Move to report.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 271 be reported. All in favor, record your vote aye. Opposed, no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I-16, no zero.
I-16, no zero. The bills are reported. If I'm keeping track properly, we have one remaining bill? Oh, we do? Marsden, okay, Senator Marsden.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, I'll do it from right here. Senate Bill 1155. This bill is designed to modernize Virginia's broadband and communications tax exemption. Virginia imposes a sales and use tax on equipment
I
purchased.
don't think that's on our,
Oh, I'm sorry, 683. I was reading the House, the House number.
Oh.
Sorry. Virginia imposes a sales and use tax on equipment purchased to expand broadband and other telecommunications networks. The law currently allows tax exemptions for some internet and broadcasting equipment purchases, but the outdated language of the exemption needs to be clarified to promote its effectiveness. The bill preserves the intent of the exemption while providing a needed update of its language so it can provide Virginia an edge in the upcoming competition for equipment and resources needed to meet our broadband goals. The language is vague. Tax treatment for all companies covered by this exemption should be the same. States with lower purchasing costs will get more investment in the broadband world. Passing the bill will speed broadband deployment here in Virginia. The bill simply clarifies what broadband and communications equipment is subject to the existing exemption so companies have certainty when making investment decisions. It's simply a matter of changes in technology outpacing the outdated language in the code. And mirabile dictu, we have heard from tax, and they have stated that the Department of Taxation considers implementation of this bill to be routine and does not require any additional funding. I put in a budget amendment, which was a placeholder with an estimate of how much it might cost, but that seems to be inoperative at this point in time. And with that, I urge you to pass the bill.
Senator Marsden, this is sort of in the category that we were hoping to look at in a joint subcommittee on tax policy. That is somewhat in the air, but I think perhaps we should carry this over for the year.
Madam Chair, if I might, broadband has become an urgency here. There is no fiscal impact on this bill to the state, and so moving this forward would put us in a better competitive position.
But there seems to be disagreement because the numbers I'm getting is it's a negative general fund of over $14 million each year.
Madam Chair, that was an estimate put forth by some industry folks. Taxation has ruled that this is routine and requires no additional
Madam Chair.
No impact.
Yes, Senator.
Can I ask that we just consider holding this bill over for the week? I think there is a lot of unknowns, but I'm not sure that the current estimates are exactly there. Would you consider holding it over for the week, and let's just make sure we have the real numbers? That would be helpful.
Okay, yes, good suggestion, Senator Newman. We'll carry this over for the week. Okay, so Senator McClellan, now I think it's the last.
Yes. So I have Senate Bill 488, which would establish the Transition Fund and Program to be administered by the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. That would, first I have some line amendments. Let me get those adopted first. Do you have those, April, or somebody?
The line amendments?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, the line amendments are technical in nature and remove reference to low emission vehicles because as the term is defined, this bill would only cover zero emission vehicles.
Right.
It refers to electric and certain battery cars that wouldn't have emissions.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the amendments? It's been moved and seconded that the amendments be agreed to. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it.
Okay, so the purpose of the fund and program would be to put in place mechanisms to help our localities, regions, and state entities plan and implement their transition to zero-emission technology in public transit. We passed a similar bill covering school buses a year or two ago, but it's only limited to school buses, but our transit systems are also undergoing this transition. And back in 2019, transportation was identified as the #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions. And this is just to put our transit systems in the same posture as our localities trying to transition their school buses.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Just
Senator Hanger.
Just speaking briefly to it, I like the underlying bill as far as creating the fund and what it's going to do. Where I have an issue with is just the dedication of revenue streams that would otherwise would be in general fund as opposed to just appropriating them. And this one singles out, unless it's been amended somewhere, the sports betting tax. So that's where my issue would be.
I'm being told there's a committee substitute. Yes.
Madam Chair,
April.
the committee substitute would create the fund, but remove the provisions related to the dedicated revenue, and it would also do the technical updates to the definitions with the thought that you would consider handling appropriations to the fund during the budget process.
Madam Chair, I'm willing to accept that and then put it in a budget amendment that would appropriate some funds into the fund. So as long as there's a fund and there's some money for it, I'm happy.
You're fine. Okay. The substitute, okay, it's been moved and seconded, the substitute be adopted. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's been moved and seconded that the bill be reported. Please record your vote.
I-16, no zero.
I-16, no zero. Bill's reported. Does that complete the agenda?
Madam Chair,
committee
that
will-
does complete the agenda.
The committee will rise. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy.